Be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. And then there were three. What am I talking about? The Tory leadership competition. Of course, Kemi Badenoch is out. If you ask me, though, that is the wrong decision. But what do you think? Do you agree with me or not? And Jess Phillips, the Shadow Home Office Minister for Domestic Violence, has criticised the, what she calls, horrible decision of a Premier League football club who decided not to suspend a Premier League footballer who has been arrested for rape. Where do you stand on this? If you're accused of rape and then, in fact, arrested, should you be suspended from your job? Or should you only be suspended if you are charged? Fascinating discussion, this one. Really interested to hear your thoughts. And in-work poverty has increased. What is the answer to this? Is it simple, just giving more people more money? Is that going to fix it? And what do you think about drugs? We've had a war on drugs, haven't we, for as long as I can remember anyway. The latest ideas now, though, are that if people have, say, 3 strikes, they could potentially lose their passport and driving licence. Seems a bit weird to me, but would you be in favour of such a policy? We'll have all of that to come. But first, let's get tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. And the top story tonight on GB News. Major incidents have been declared by both the London Fire Brigade and Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service. That's due to a surge in ground fires across both regions. Around 100 firefighters are currently tackling blazes which have spread to one residential area in Wennington. That's in East London. People have been seen removing gas canisters from their pubs and restaurants in the village amid fears they may explode. The Mayor of Havering, Trevor McKeever, who's a former firefighter himself, is supporting the crew at the scene.
The Fire Brigade were called just before 12-ish, I do believe, to a rapidly developing fire in the fields, which just so happens it's behind the back of Wennington Fire Station. Obviously, the crews responded very quickly and almost immediately it went to a 12-pump fire. It is a tinderbox. We've had so much dry weather. You've got a little bit of a wind today that's aiding the spread of the flames. So it's a combination of the two. And obviously the guys, like the firefighters who are working really hard down here, have to get the water in place first off as well. So no, the guys are working their socks off really, really well down here.
The Mayor of Havering speaking there, and we will keep you up to date as those blazes continue into the night here on GB News. And it all comes, of course, as the UK experiences temperatures of over 40 degrees Celsius. For the first time ever, we're told, the Met Office saying a provisional reading of 40.3 degrees has been officially measured at Coningsby in Lincolnshire. And red extreme heat warnings continue for millions of people right across England, with amber warnings for most of the UK. Network Rail has also told people only to travel if it's absolutely necessary. Many train services across the country have had to be cancelled. A major search operation is also underway for missing swimmers, one particularly in Essex. The Coast Guard there is confirming 5 swimmers were rescued from the water around Clacton Pier. 2 have been taken to hospital. Emergency services are currently trying to find the 4th swimmer. And it's not just us. In Europe, firefighters continue to battle wildfire across the continent rather. More than 34,000 people had to be evacuated from southwestern France. And there have been more than 510 heat-related deaths in Spain following a week of soaring temperatures there. Some 2,000 firefighters are fighting the blazes, which started a week ago and have burned around 20,000 hectares of land. A Londoner now living in the south of France says a fire is spreading very quickly.
We only hope that this can be contained in the forest and we can go back to our homes within the next week, and then we can look at the damage, and with the Mary we can make some changes so this doesn't happen again to the people of Arcachon.
Well, to politics now, and Kemi Badenoch is out of the Conservative leadership race. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak secured the most votes with support from 118 MPs. The Trade Minister, Penny Mordaunt, came in second with 92 votes, and the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, secured 86. The next and final ballot among MPs take place tomorrow, where the candidates will be whittled down to the final 2. Full coverage right here, GB News.
She didn't think she'd survive those early rounds, and each round we went up, and the momentum was very much with us. A huge amount of excitement and intrigue amongst colleagues, and frankly she was a breath of fresh air that added that extra layer of intrigue to this contest. And I'm just disappointed, genuinely disappointed, that we couldn't get her over the line today. We had a lot of conversations, but we couldn't just quite do it. But to come forth from that standing start with it's something that all of us can be very proud of.
And as the race to replace him ramps up, Boris Johnson has chaired his final cabinet meeting. The Prime Minister defended his record on tackling COVID-19, as well as steering the economy through the pandemic and the cost of living crisis. Mr Johnson also reaffirmed the government's commitment to reaching net zero emissions by 2050. Some public sector workers are to receive their highest pay rises for more than 2 decades. Over 1 million NHS staff, that includes nurses, paramedics and midwives, will get a pay rise of at least £1,400, with lowest earners to receive up to 9.3%. Eligible dentists and doctors will receive 4.5% and police officers 5%. And wages are falling at the fastest rate since records began, when taking into account rising prices. The latest data from the ONS showed paychecks dropped by 3.7% over the 3 months to May when compared against inflation. Meanwhile, the number of UK workers on payrolls has risen by 31,000 to 29.6 million between May and June. And grocery bills have increased by over £450 per year. The retail research think tank Kantar says the increase comes after food and drink inflation hit the second highest level on record. Particularly affected are dog food, butter and milk. They've risen the fastest over the last 12 months. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. Now it's time for Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight, my panel. Now, if you're a keen viewer of Dewbs & Co, you'll know that we started off with 3, then we've trialled 2, then we decided to stick with 2 for another night, but the pesky weather has had other ideas because one of my 2 is stuck on a train, long story short, so I've drafted in another one to make up the 2. Anyway, the one that's stuck on the train is almost here, so guess what? For tonight, one night only, I'm going to go back to 3. Did that make any sense? You still with me? Yeah, good. We've got James Bloodworth is one of them. Good evening, James. We've got Benedict Spence, and Tim Montgomery is the one that's stuck on a train/a taxi, and, you know, he will be here shortly. James Bloodworth, you've changed your hair since I last saw you.
I have. I've gone blonde. I wanted to see if it was true that blondes have more fun.
And do they?
I don't know. It's too early to say. I only did it yesterday.
Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, he's done his hair blonde. Is it blonde?
It's straw coloured at the moment, but
It's
hopefully the
straw-coloured.
sun, the strong sun, will change it.
If you're listening and you're not watching, you can't see him. It's like an Eminem look, isn't it? Back in the day. Has he still got blonde hair, Eminem? I don't know.
He's about 50 now, right?
50?
He's probably grey.
Eminem is 50? No, he's not.
He's in his 40s, I think.
He's not doing well. He's
He's not
aging
doing-
like the rest of us.
Is he?
Yeah.
And he's grey. Is he really,
And
Eminem?
as he
No, he's
ages,
great.
his work gets more and more embarrassing, as older people's do. So, you know, that's an
Older
interesting
people?
phenomenon.
That's
He's-
sending him grey.
Older people. He's only 49.
Like dad jokes, you know.
But he's
That's
only
just-
49. That's not old.
I mean,
He's not old.
I think
He's
in the
not
rap...
old, but for those of us who grew up and he was like a young pop star, it seems. I mean, I'm almost 40. I'm only a bit younger than him. But
in the
it's
rap
like, well,
game,
he's old
50
now.
in the rap game, 50 is old.
Is it?
Yeah, I think you're over the hill when you get there.
Over the hill, eh? Age 50.
You're
you wanna
not
be a
Dr. Dre,
rapper.
it's Consultant Dre, maybe, at best.
Right. Anyway, I've got to be honest, we massively digress. Like, I'm not supposed to be talking about Eminem or hair dye or anything, quite frankly. But let me know, what do you think? This can be the topic of the night, actually. Never mind Tory leadership competitions and drugs and rape and anything else that we'll be debating. I want to know about James's hair tonight. Was you brunette before?
Yeah.
Yes, there you go. What do you reckon? Blonde or brunette? You can get in touch with me. Let me know your thoughts on everything tonight, but crucially also James Bloodworth's hair colour. All the important things I like to get into on Dewbs and Kerr tonight. You can get in touch with me. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. You can tweet me at gbnews or at Michelle Dewbs. Wayne says, thank goodness you're back, Michelle. They shouldn't let you have days off. I didn't have days off. I was ill, actually. I had a day off, but I was laid feeling sorry for myself. I lost my voice. Some people might be very pleased about that, but it's back. I am back. What else? Someone's in touch with your hair already, Clive. He said it's not blonde, it's ginger.
That's fine. I'm not prejudiced.
He says that's fine. He's not.
Gingers.
Yeah, good. There you go. In fact, they're all saying that. Michael says, stop messing around, Michelle. That it's not blonde. It is ginger. James says he doesn't care what it is. You like it. You like it nonetheless, don't you? John says, Dewbs, you're at it again already. Please, can you stop talking with your hands? It looks like you are auditioning for amateur dramatics, he says. I'm sorry, I thought I was adding emphasis to what I'm talking about. I was getting into it there, but I'll try and not talk with my hands, John, just for you. Right, rather than hands and hairstyles, shall I get into what was supposed to be my top story tonight? The leadership debate. Where are you on this? We're down to the final three, of course, talking about the next leader of the Conservative Party and our next Prime Minister. Got to be honest, I mean, it was pretty much predictable, really, wasn't it? Rishi Sunak is in, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss, they've all made the cut. Kemi Badenoch, of course, has now gone. So the remaining three will go head-to-head tomorrow. And then, at last, we will know who the final two are. Just to give you some numbers, Rishi Sunak got 118, Penny Mordaunt 92, Liz Truss 86, Kemi Badenoch 59. Got to be honest about this, really. I was a bit disappointed to see Kemi was out. Benedict, I'll start with you on this. I've got to say, I don't mean to be mean, but I don't think Rishi Sunak is going to win the membership vote. So it almost seems to me like a wasted place in the final.
I think that this is the final three is a triumph for mediocrity. I think we had a number of particularly interesting and insightful candidates. Two of them went out rather early on. I thought Nadim Zahawi and Sajid Javid were at least interesting. I didn't think that they'd necessarily, both of them, go that far, but I did have some high hopes for Sajid Javid. Didn't make it. Kemi Badenoch certainly has got the support of the membership. It appears to be the case. Sort of every poll that puts her head-to-head against any of the other candidates would have had her winning. Whether or not that would have translated to the general electorate, I don't know, but if she had had 2 years as Prime Minister to sort of get her message across, get her face across, who knows? What we are left with is a bizarre situation where Rishi Sunak, who I think is roundly unpopular these days, broadly in the country, is probably actually the best of those three. I think Penny Mordaunt has not particularly covered herself in glory. She was high hopes. Many people had high hopes for her, but actually she stumbles a lot. She doesn't appear to have a particularly clear or interesting message. And Liz Truss, I think offers absolutely nothing in terms of vibrancy or anything new. You know, it's a tired, rehashed, reanimated corpse of Margaret Thatcher wannabe, is what Liz Truss is. And that might sound a little bit harsh, but even down to the fact that she likes to role play as her in Estonia, in Red Square. She wears the same outfit, and she tries to do the whole thing of having the charisma, and she doesn't.
You're telling me that you think that Liz Truss is doing some form of role play when she's
LARPing. She's trying. The Conservative Party, I know Margaret Thatcher is very popular because Margaret Thatcher was, a titanic figure in Conservative Party history. But very much what Liz Truss is trying to do is ape that image and ape a lot of her policies. She's, I don't doubt that she believes a lot of these things wholeheartedly, but she is appealing to that wing, right down to the fact that she does try to quite literally portray herself in the same way as Thatcher does. And if you don't believe me, just go and look at the fact that she wore the same outfit in the first debate as Margaret Thatcher did in her first hustings. It's really very see-through. And if that is the extent of Liz Truss's persona, what she's offering is just Thatcher 0.20, then I think actually we're in a lot of trouble, because a lot of people are putting it down now, if it comes down to a final two of Truss and Sunak, that it would be Truss that wins. And I don't actually think that the country necessarily needs that.
What do you think to this, ladies and gentlemen? Benedict reckons that Liz Truss is basically trying to role-play and pretend to be Margaret Thatcher, even down to the dress that she wears. When I've got nothing better to do, I am going to go Google dresses of Liz Truss and Margaret Thatcher and see if their similarities are indeed there. But what's your thoughts on that? James, where do you stand?
I mean, I think the Conservatives have perhaps learned a lesson from Labour's flirtation with Jeremy Corbyn as its leader, and also Boris Johnson. I mean, they seem to be opting for a more mainstream candidate instead of going for a kind of wildcard candidate. I think Rishi Sunak is... I mean, I'm not a Conservative. I don't have any kind of dog in this race, but I think Rishi Sunak is slightly more credible, even though I think he is unpopular in the country, because at least I think he's the one who's coming out against massive tax cuts straight away. I think he's being realistic when he says that, it'd be a mistake to start cutting taxes now. The priority should be to get inflation down, because that's what's squeezing people's cost of living. Whereas Liz Truss has promised this massive package of tax cuts immediately, which I think would be a disaster for the country.
Well, I'm interested in what all you guys are saying as well, by the way. Many of you, Chris says, I'm very disappointed that Kemi Badenoch is out of the race. He says, of those that remain, I hope Liz Truss gets in the final two and eventually gets it. You reckon that Rishi will bankrupt the country, whereas Mordaunt will make us more work than we already are. Right, if you heard a bit of squeaking during James, it wasn't his hairdo, it wasn't his new hairdo, everyone. It was Tim Montgomery sneaking in. Takes more than a heat wave to stop you, doesn't it?
Well, I'm sorry to be late. An hour and a half train journey became 3.5 hours, so I'm a little
dedication,
bit late.
Ladies and gentlemen, dedication. Well, you just joined us, Tim, just in time to discuss the leadership competition. Long story short, I basically think it was a tragedy, really, that Kemi was voted out. You don't really like any of them. Benedict thinks that Liz Truss is trying to emulate Margaret Thatcher, even down to the clothes that she wears.
I've just been listening to Benedict. I have to say I agree. I think
you don't.
There's too much of a Thatcher tribute act taking place.
Yeah.
Really?
And the tribute acts are never as good as the original.
So, Tim, who would you like to see?
Well, I agree with you on Kemi, Michelle, and I think of the sort of Kemi and I think Tom Tugendhat were the two really authentic candidates in this race for me. Both have now gone. And I think the choice facing the Conservative Party now, and I'm a committed Conservative, unlike James, is I think the choice facing the Conservative Party now is pretty poor. I think what Benedict says about Liz is right. I think it's Fishy Rishi, I think is the name. There's another, Dan Wootton refers to Rishi Sunak.
Yes, I've heard that.
I think Penny Mordaunt probably doesn't have the level of experience necessary to be Prime Minister. So I supported ousting Boris Johnson. I thought he'd become a stranger to the truth by the time he was ousted. But I'm afraid the Conservative Party is in a bad position at the moment. And it just looks like what it is, a party that's now been in power for a long time. They've been 12 long, eventful years. And I'm afraid the party looks tired and exhausted. And the next leader's task of reinvention is going to be an uphill struggle.
There you go. What do you reckon to all of that then? Uphill struggle or what? Tell me, by the way, as well, do you think that they were right, actually, to press pause on the televised debates? Was that the right thing to do or not? Labour, of course, was having a field day, wasn't they, clipping up some of the criticisms of each other, the blue-on-blue attacks. Did you support that pausing of the televised debate, or did you want to see more of it? I'm sure we'll have it to come, though. Alan says Tory MPs should all hang their heads in shame. Kemi could have been their saviour, but, as usual, they didn't have the courage. Brenda says, I'm sorry to see Kemi leave the leadership vote. Yawn. They're all so boring now, and they will never win the next election. Jackie says, please don't let Rishi win. He was a useless Chancellor, so why do you think he would be a good PM? Do me a favour tonight, by the way. If you are indeed a Conservative member, send me an email and just make sure you put that right at the top, because what I'm fascinated to learn is I have a little theory, and I do not think that the membership base will put Rishi Sunak through. So I personally think it's a wasted vote. If I was Rishi Sunak, I'd look at that, I'd think to myself, I'm not going to win over the members, so I might as well step back, give my place to someone where there is a true competition. I wasn't even going to talk too much about this leadership, but I will just ask you, Tim, what do you think is my good idea about Rishi stepping back and just leaving two candidates that stand a chance of the members' vote to thrash it out? Why not?
Well, look, he's not going to do that for a start, even if your advice is the right advice. He wants to be Prime Minister a great deal. I don't think the Tory members like Rishi Sunak ideologically. I think that's a fact. But one key difference between Tory members and I would say Labour members of the party that James supports is Tory members like a winner more than someone that they're ideologically close to. And if opinion polls show that voters won't connect with Liz Truss, which I think is a real possibility, and they think that voters will vote for Rishi Sunak, I think there's every possibility that Sunak will win this. Now, he's probably the person I least want to be Tory leader in the remaining in the race. But if I'm realistic, I think the Tory members may choose him simply for the reason that they want to win the next election and stop Keir Starmer and Nicola Sturgeon being holding the balance of power at the next election.
Well, there you go. Nigel's been in touch with me saying all of this is like selling your faithful old car and then finding out that you can't buy another one, which is anything like as good.
That's a good example.
He says, I'm a Conservative Party member and I am totally underwhelmed with the choice, or should I say lack thereof, available. We should have kept Boris. Cheers, says Nigel. There you go. Let me know your thoughts, GBViews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews or at Michelle Dewbs. Now, another story that caught my eye today, something that really fascinated me actually, is about this. If you get accused of rape, and by the way, men and women, they get accused, it's not just a man thing, this, but if you get accused of rape, so you're accused, then perhaps you're arrested, should you be suspended from your job? Or should you basically be innocent until proven guilty, and you shouldn't be suspended until if the point of charge? Lots of people, I trailed this at the start of the programme, lots of you have been getting in touch. Anne says, no, this footballer should not be suspended. In fact, I do not think any man should be named in rape cases until charged. Bernard says, innocent until proven guilty. But what do you think? Ponder that for a couple of minutes while I take a break. And we'll be getting into that and a couple of your reactions as well about the Tories. Stephen has just emailed in saying, I'm a card-carrying member. The party has missed a trick right now. I'm going to vote anyone but Rishi. I'm off, Steve says. Where are you off to, Steve? Don't leave Dewbs and Co or anything like that. You mean the Tory party or what? Ponder that thought about the rapists. If you were accused of something, should you be suspended from your job? And if so, at what point? Accusation, arrest, charge? You tell me. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me until 7 o'clock tonight. Mixing it up a little bit tonight because we're supposed to have two panellists. One of them got stuck on a train. We drafted someone in to cover. Then the train boy made it all in. So long story short, we're three now. We're all three. Well, we're four, actually, if you count me. James Bloodworth is number one. Person, you are lighting up my inbox tonight. Everyone's going on about your hair. There's a unanimous opinion outside in the great nation. It's ginger. People are saying it's not blonde, it's ginger, you need to earn it.
Boris Johnson blonde.
Boris Johnson blonde, he says. And everyone's pointing out that you can get in the cinema free. If you're ginger, you can get into the cinema for free.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, so there you go. Once you finish...
The heat wave.
Once you
during the heat wave, but that finishes today, so I have to go tonight.
Yeah, dash straight over. Get yourself to Leicester Square or something. Get in for free. There you go. Anyway, yes, I almost forgot. Train boy, as I've been calling him, Tim Montgomery is here. Benedict Spence stepped up to the plate as well. Heat waves don't stop us, do they?
Tory, Statler and Waldorf over here laughing at the one with the ginger hair. We won't miss out on it, will we?
Well, what can I say? That has been the main talking point there tonight. I have to say, James's hair. Although some of you have also been in touch as well about the Tory leadership, I'm convinced, I'm convinced that people do not want Rishi Sunak. I've asked you to make it clear to me, are you a card-carrying member? Are you a Conservative member? If you are, would you vote for Rishi? And the short answer that I'm getting through is no. If you are a Tory member and you would vote for Rishi, let me know, because I'm fascinated. I don't mind being wrong, but I don't think that I am. Terry has said, never, ever would I vote for Rishi. He has shown his true colours and it's not loyalty. Jill has said, I am a Tory member and I would never vote for Rishi. Boris was good at his job, but they've brought him down. Long story short, I do feel that people have a sense that there was a bit of a coup. I think there'll be some disagreement towards that on this panel, but do you know what? I'm going to move on from the Tories for a moment, if you will indulge me. We'll come back to some of your opinions on that one before the end of the programme. But for now, this is a fascinating subject, I find. Anyway, a Premier League footballer basically has been accused of rape. He was arrested for said accusation, but his club have carried on letting him play. He will be allowed to travel, he will be allowed to play. Jess Phillips, who is the Shadow Minister for Domestic Abuse, she's horrified by this. But the Football Association has basically said the player can fulfil his professional commitments, including permitted travel. Now, I kind of, the essence of what Jess Phillips is saying, I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit because it was quite long, is, of course, Cliff Richard. He got accused of things, and you'll remember the helicopters over his house and all the rest of it. And it led to that conversation, didn't it, about at what point should a man have his anonymity removed, or should a person, it's not always men, but have their anonymity removed if they are accused of rape. James Bloodworth, I'm going to come to you on this, because the Premier League footballer that's currently in question, he denies having done anything wrong, is out on bail. Club basically standing by him for the moment. He's allowed to play, etc. Jess Phillips is horrified by this. Where do you stand on it?
I mean, it's a very difficult question. I don't think there is a perfect solution to this. I think most companies, if this person worked for most companies, they would be suspended just while the inquiries are going on. If they weren't charged, I think they should be reinstated. And if they were charged, then obviously not. It seems to be multiple allegations. And I think due to the seriousness of the allegations, I think it would be reasonable for the football club to suspend them. I do think, however, I'm not sure how I feel about anonymity more generally in terms of the media, because I do think there is a problem, as you mentioned, the Cliff Richard case. On the one hand, I see the argument from politicians like Jess Phillips who don't believe in anonymity, because then I think more potential victims can come forward if they see this person in the media. But I think there is a problem with people having their lives ruined with malicious allegations sometimes, and then the media kind of catches hold of that. It's not just in sexual assaults. I mean, I'm from Bristol, and there was the case of Christopher Jeffries, whose name was dragged across the media with these lurid allegations in the case of Joanna Yeats, and his life was almost destroyed by that. So I do think there is a case for anonymity, but at the same time, I do think this Premier League footballer, due to the nature of the allegations and multiple allegations, should be suspended as someone working for a corporation would be.
So James's view, Tim, I'll come to you on this, but James's view, and I'm going to, put it in a nutshell. What you're saying is that if someone is accused of such thing, they should be suspended pending investigation.
But I mean, yeah? I don't think there's a blanket law on this. I think it is still down to the company. If I was running the company, I would suspend that person while the inquiry is ongoing. That would be my personal decision. But I mean, that isn't the law. The Premier League football club's not breaking the law by doing this.
Tim, where do you stand?
Well, I think there are three stages when you have a case like this. First of all, there's a stage of the accusation. Then, if the police think there's sufficient evidence against that person, they will charge. Then, of course, you have to go through a process which might or might not lead to conviction. I think when you get to the position of being charged, I think the police have then gathered enough evidence where there is a balance of possibility that you are guilty. That seems to me to be the right time to publish this person's name, withdraw any anonymity, because then...
At the point of charge.
At the point of charge, because then I think for the reasons James says, sometimes then other people, victims of this person, might come forward, which is a very important part of processing the case against them. But until then, we all know, once a charge like this is attached to someone, a lot of people think there's no smoke without fire. Your reputation can be ruined. And I think we need to obviously make sure we have a system that does its best to protect victims and ensure prosecutions, but equally the protection of the innocent is really also very important.
Yeah, and I saw a story, it was last week actually, there's a woman in Darlington, just checking my location is right, and it is, Teesside Crown Court basically was responsible for this one. She accused her neighbour of raping her and he didn't. It was all kind of made up. So she is now in prison. This guy, the victim of these false allegations, describes of how he had his life ruined, the estate where he lived. Everyone kind of knew about these allegations, and it is horrendous. But Benedict, I've got to say, I find this a fascinating debate because I can almost see both sides of the argument on this one, because rape is a very hard crime to prove. More often than not, there's only the two people that are there. So proving whether or not something went on that was consensual or not is very difficult. You see that with the low charge rates.
Yeah.
But what is the right time? One says on allegation, the other one says on charge. Where do you stand?
I think it's on charge. We've seen a number of footballers actually being accused of rape or sexual assault or similar offences over the years. Some of them have been convicted, others have not had charges brought against them. And the difficulty that I have is if you suspend this individual, the club doesn't put out a statement about an injury or anything like that. The player just doesn't turn up for a couple of weeks. It's incredibly apparent to everybody who that person is. It completely undermines the point about it being anonymous, because everybody in the stadium and everybody watching at home can say, so-and-so is not playing again. Yeah, and there's been no word as to why that is. So that sort of undermines the idea of anonymity. Also, I think everybody would agree that whilst you've not been charged with something, we're talking about people's livelihoods, but we're not just talking about the individual's livelihoods. It's a team sport. It affects other people. Perhaps it depends on for the club. In this instance, the club has said that they're not going to suspend the individual. Previous clubs have suspended individuals. It might be that the club perhaps decides that this person is too important to their overall performance. Now, that's not how these things should be decided, but we do need to remember it's a multi-million pound business. There's a lot riding on these stakes. And if you're a football club and you're sat there, you're going, well, OK, it's just an allegation at this stage, I can understand why they'd be saying, well, actually, we're not going to suspend this person because it could turn out to be absolutely nothing that's worth pursuing, and we potentially could suffer as a result of that.
So this fellow, you touched on the multiple allegations. Just to be clear, obviously this person's not been named and he denies all this, but long story short, he was arrested for a rape earlier this year. Then whilst he was in custody, he was essentially arrested again for another 2 rapes of a second person. So that's where we're at. Alleged rapes, I've just had it in my ear. I've got to say the word alleged, and I will repeat myself that he has, of course, denied all of this. But I just find this absolutely fascinating because one of the conundrums is, like I said, because it's hard to prove a rape, if you don't make it public, which I'm not in favour, by the way, I don't think I should be able to say something about you and then your reputation is instantly put out there as a potential rapist before it's even been proven. So I'm on the side of the fence about actually your anonymity, being accused, should be respected. You should be kept out of the public eye from that perspective. But then say, for example, I don't want to say you because I don't want to make it about you.
I'm fine.
A person is indeed a rapist, and in fact is a serial rapist. If it was known, from the off that actually this person has been accused of this, then you do stand more chance of other people going, well, he did it to me, he did it to me, he did it to me, and then you get the charge. Whereas if it was just you and you're hidden away, you might not get that charge.
And I think that's why probably there can't be hard and fast rules here, because I think this point you've made, James has made, about multiple allegations does begin to tip the balance against that person. And if a football club executive or someone else is faced with, well, this isn't just one charge, this is the other evidence, I think you have to begin to use your judgment. And if someone does look that they may be serially guilty of an offence, then I think we have to count upon the wisdom of leaders of the organisations in question. But just back to what you were saying earlier, Michelle, without going into details, I have a friend involved in a dispute with a neighbour in Salisbury at the moment, and their neighbour has just for no basis at all, called them a paedophile. And what we do have to accept is that there are people in Britain who are very wise to using malicious allegations to damage the reputations of people they're in a basic dispute with. And so this is different, I think, because of those multiple allegations. But let's not get away from the fact that whereas there are horrible rapists in this country, there are also people very capable of making malicious allegations.
Well, I've got goosebumps at the moment because I've just seen an email pop up on my screen, and I shall keep your name anonymous. But what you're saying, this is a viewer email. Over 20 years ago, after splitting from my ex, she accused me of molesting my son. This is literally making me go goosebumpy. Long story short, it was proved beyond any doubt that she had lied. But these accusations destroyed my life entirely. I lost my job, my home, literally everything because of the stigma of simply being accused. I had to leave my hometown, leave behind my family and my friends, and having to start all over again of something that was basically proven to be a lie. And that makes me goosepimply because, there can be people that are vindictive. Maybe their partner has met someone else or cheated or whatever. And because that person is here to get back at them, they do often make up things like this, which is why I'm in favour of anonymity. But I can see the flip side, which is that if someone is a rapist and it's hard to prove, if they have been doing this left, right and centre, that would only ever come out if that name was known. So it's a real tough one for me.
Yeah, I think with this specific case, I think there's also a duty of care on the part of the football club to female members of staff, because we think of football, we think of it, a male-dominated game. But these clubs have extensive female staff behind the scenes in the background. And I think when there are multiple allegations, I think if I was chief executive of the football club, I do think there is an obligation to ensure their safety as well. That is obviously horrible to hear about. There are malicious allegations around as well. But I mean, this is why it's difficult, and there can be no hard and fast rule with these cases, I think.
Well, lots of you guys getting in touch saying that you all believe pretty much in innocent until proven guilty. Someone else says, would you suspend them if you were having to pay 150 grand a week to keep them off work? But really, is it a monetary thing for you? The person that's just writing there, Bernard, I think it is. Is it really a monetary thing? So you're telling me, I don't know, if it was a cleaner or something on minimum wage, you'd be okay to suspend that person. But because it's a higher earner, you wouldn't? Is it finances that would make your decision on that one? Not so sure about that. Again, most people are saying you're innocent until proven guilty. You should not be suspended until charged. Christine says, suspending people at the point of allegation simply opens the floodgates to anyone with a grudge to accuse you of anything. Barry says anonymity should be afforded to everybody until proven guilty. Yorkie says we need to know rapist names, as it turns out, in case it turns out they've done it before. Yorkie, let me ask you this, though. You're saying we need to know rapist names. You're concluding then that at the point of an allegation, this person is a rapist. This is what you're saying. You need to know these people's names. But at what point? Because if I make an allegation against you, should your name be made public? I've just read you out the reader there, the viewer there, who's explained their life was absolutely devastated because of an allegation that was since proven to be untrue. I've just mentioned to you the case last week of a lady in Darlington who accused her neighbour, male neighbour, of raping her. His life was destroyed. It turned out, it was found in a court of law, she'd made it up. So, I mean, it's a fine line, isn't it? Valerie says, simply this depends on the profession. Anyone that's in closer contact with the public, health workers, the police, social workers, etc. Is it a profession thing? I don't know. Should a professional footballer be treated differently to a cleaner? I don't know why I'm picking on the cleaners, but you tell me. It's a difficult one for this. Lots of you still emailing in about James's hair. Lots of you. I've also just got a message tonight with some very bad news, ladies and gentlemen. I was going to have Chinese takeaway tonight, and I think because of the heat wave, it's closed. That's appalling. I'm going to have to take a break just to reflect on that alone and compose myself. But do let me know your thoughts on this next topic while we're on the break. In-work poverty. Is this now becoming the norm? The number of people that are working and would be classified as poor is on the rise. What's the answer to this? Do we need to classify what we call poor these days, or do we need to give everyone big pay rises? You tell me. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping me company tonight. I've explained the story already. We're supposed to have two, but we've got three. It's a long story, so I won't bore you with it again, because Martin's emailed in saying, Michelle, you talk for too long, get to the point quicker, so I won't even tell you the story again about my panel. I'll just tell you, we've got James Bloodworth, we've got Tim Montgomery and Benedict Spence. Keeping me talking in the break just then was some story about my Chinese takeaway. The gents were asking me, can't you just go to a different Chinese takeaway? And I was explaining, yes, I can. My Chinese takeaway is closed tonight. I'm very upset about this, in case you've just tuned in and wondering what I'm talking about. And I was explaining there's a big difference between Chinese. Not all of them are up to scratch. I judge it all on the prawn toast. Is there a layer of prawn on the toast or not? That's a very critical point to me. Tim was explaining his measure of a good Chinese is the hot and sour soup. Ken has got in touch and said, what are you talking about Chinese for? In this weather, you need a vindaloo and a lager. Anyway.
Agree on the lager, not so sure about the vindaloo.
There you go, vindaloo. Who eats curries in this kind of weather? It's too hot, isn't it, for spicy curry? Anyway, yet again, I digress. Nigel Farage is keeping us company at 7 o'clock. Nigel, what have you got for us?
Good evening, Michelle. A couple of things. Firstly, the one insurgent, the one person with fresh ideas, has been kicked out of the Tory leadership contest. I will ask my audience, are you inspired by the choice of three? I'm not. If I was a Conservative member, I'm not even sure I could bring myself to vote. And the fire in Weddington, right down there in East London, we'll have a reporter on the scene. As fires break out all over the country, are we in a fit state to cope?
I've got to say, the short answer to that question is no, if you ask me, Nigel. But nonetheless, we'll look forward to that. I'll see you at 7 o'clock. Are we in a fit state as a country to cope with the heat waves? I say no. What do you reckon to that? Get in touch, let me know. But let's talk pay, shall we? Figures released today have showed that real pay is falling at its fastest rate since 2001. What do we even mean when we say real pay? Is there any difference? Real pay?
Inflation adjusted, is that what they mean? Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, pay was down nearly 3% from a year earlier when adjusted for inflation. Long story short, it means that people are working a full-time job and yet can't afford to make ends meet. So then, of course, there's this big focus then on in-work poverty. Is this becoming a big thing? When we talk about this, there's a couple of different thoughts here. One of them is just give everyone a pay rise. Is it that simple? The other side of it, when we talk about making ends meet, do we just need to readjust our ends? Are we expecting too bigger things from life? James Bloodworth, you went undercover, didn't you? This is your kind of forte, all this kind of topic. Tell me, where do you stand on this working poverty?
I mean, working poverty, it isn't new, but it's obviously getting worse because inflation is so high. So in 2016, I went undercover in many low-wage jobs in the UK. And, yeah, you had people working very hard, but then they were still struggling to make ends meet, and then the taxpayer was basically having to top up their wages. This is also happening because the cost of childcare is very high in this country. So you have people who are having to work part-time and look after children the rest of the time, and then they don't have enough money to make ends meet, so they have to claim things like tax credits, and also the cost of rent, because there hasn't been sufficient homes built in this country, for example. So the cost of rent, the cost of getting a mortgage is very high. Therefore, we're subsidising rents with benefits
But what do you think
with housing benefits.
What do you think is the definition of poverty these days?
Well, I mean, real wages have gone down because it simply means, you know, if I receive a 5% pay rise, but inflation goes up by 10%, I haven't actually received a pay rise. So I'll have less money
Yeah, but are
next
you
year.
poor?
Well, it depends. I mean, lots of people in this country, there are below the poverty line. I mean, we've seen since in the last 9 years, only the top 1% has seen their pay keep up with inflation. So yeah, many of these people are poor, and they're having to receive tax credits, and the state's having to pick up the tab for employers in many cases. So I worked at Amazon, which is headed by the richest man in the world. It's the biggest multinational in the world, and you had people from there claiming tax credits from the state because they're not being paid enough. That is a fundamentally unjust situation. And I think also productivity is part of this as well. So we have very poor productivity in the UK, and this is one of the reasons why companies are not paying staff more.
Tim, what do you say?
One thing before I would say, James and I are on the opposite sides of the political equation, but his book is a brilliant book. It's a real interesting, fascinating, detailed examination of how some of these big firms do mistreat
What an endorsement.
labourers.
I know
great
Tim's endorsed it previously. I mean,
No, I really think
we're on a similar page on this topic.
It's a great book. Look, obviously voted to leave the European Union, but I think they also voted at that time for a big reset of the economy, and we haven't had that. So one of the things I would have liked a Conservative government to have done, for example, would be to cut a lot of university spending, which I think is way too excessive, and spend an awful lot more on lifelong learning and retraining for people to have the technical skills that they need to get really good jobs, to have the sort of jobs that would pay well. For the moment, there's only short-term things we can do, like cut energy bills by axing some of the ridiculous green levies that I think we have in the UK, but the long we have to reskill our population with lifelong technical education. We send far too many people to university, and we send far too few people to technical colleges.
But then who does the non-skilled, and I'm trying not to be offensive in what I say, but who does the lesser skilled roles then, if you're busily making everyone technically skilled?
Machines, unfortunately. More and more of this work is going to be automated. And so with more and more work automated, we have to ensure that the rest of the labour force have the skills for the new jobs that are going to come in on stream. Now, some of them, they won't be technical or engineering. Some of them will be, masseurs and sort of, beauty, sort of some of the more lifestyle caring services that are going to become more important as a lot of richer people, want to buy those sorts of services. So we don't have to assume that everyone's going to be, woodwork or whatever. It's going to have to be an inventive strategy.
Benedict Spence, where are you on it?
Sam Ashworth-Hayes wrote a very good piece about productivity in the UK in The Spectator over the weekend, basically talking about how the British state now exists to put a brake on growth in this country. And as Tim says, there's no quick solution, there's no quick fix to any of this, but solving the productivity crisis that we have in this country would go a long way towards that, and that will mean, again, as Tim said, Brexit was about not just leaving the European Union, it was about fundamentally changing the nature of our politics and our economy. It would require reform that, sadly, the Conservative Party doesn't really particularly seem interested in doing. But it would mean, cutting red tape. And it affects all sorts of different things, from house building to infrastructure to education. Ultimately, our state moves very sluggishly. It actively prevents there from being growth. And through that, that's how it is that we all end up getting progressively slower. Two very good examples that Sam made was that we would be the 49th poorest state in the United States, were we in the United States, and that Poland's economy is going to overtake us in the next 20 years. Now, Poland's economy is also likely to overtake Germany's in the next 25 years. That's also an endorsement of Poland. But that's the point. Poland is a country that is run on significantly less red tape and a lot more sort of industry. I suppose if you might put it broadly, it's good at making things. It's good at, sort of working from the ground up. Whereas this country, ultimately, it exists for it exists for older people. It's big on welfare politics rather than sort of creative politics. It's not really interested in sort of turbocharging the economy. It's more interested in sort of inoculating us all against shocks and things like that, which is why I think, for example, we spend so much money on our health service compared to, say, our education system. That's where the priority is. It's about keeping people sort of in their little stasis. It's not about actually making things any better. And I think that's ultimately how you're going to solve increasing poverty in this country, is by fundamentally changing the nature of the state into one that is a lot more aggressive in pursuit of growth.
See, I want to come back in a second to what we mean by poverty. I do want to just revisit that point, but just some of the viewers have been in touch. Martin says, Michelle, I've earned £21,000 a year for the last 11 years and I can still cope fine with the cost of living. So I think the sentiment there is about it's how you cut your cloth, basically. Dave says, I earn £10 an hour, I'm single and I'm struggling to keep a roof over my head. When I add in the cost of prescriptions, opticians, dentists, council tax benefits, handouts, then I subtract all of that from my monthly wage, I'm worse off. He says it's not even worth me working. What do you mean? What benefit handout costs have you got? I'm confused by that. But Dave, I think you make a good point there. What you're saying essentially is is it worth me working? And I think as a society, that's a real fine line we've got to tread, because I do personally believe in the welfare state for those people that can't work. I think if you can't work because you're, I don't know, ill or whatever, there should be a welfare state that supports you. But I think it should always financially be more, you should be better off if you work as opposed to choosing a life of benefits. You tell me what you think. There's a sentiment coming in here as well. Andrew says, as an ex-employer, I don't think people should get pay rises in line with current inflation. After all, when inflation drops back down again, would all employees accept a corresponding pay reduction? That one's come through quite a lot, actually. Should people be receiving money to match today's inflation rates? And if so, what happens when the costs of things come down? Do you think they would? Can you imagine a scenario where, I don't know, say I'll pick on a Chinese takeaway, actually reduces their costs again? I'm not so sure. Samantha, this is a big point that people are coming on. What does poverty mean? Samantha says, why don't people get rid of the iPhones, stop smoking, reduce socialising? You don't have to go on holiday. You don't need to buy new clothes all the time. And by the way, people should stop having a go at other people who've worked hard to earn good money. Politics of envy, she suggests. Where do you stand on that, James, in terms of when we talk about poverty? Because there are different definitions nowadays about what poverty means. And I think there is a sense among some people, which is, well, people have got iPhones, they have holidays, they do this, they do that, so that's not poverty.
Well, I mean, anyone who doubts that there's poverty in the UK wants to come down to Bethnal Green, where I live, and look at the state of the high street there now, the sheer number of homeless people that there are now compared to 10 years ago, say, the squalor, the number of people who are one paycheck away from being evicted from their flats. I mean, the statistics are clear. Absolute poverty has risen in the UK.
What's absolute poverty?
Well, there's a definition of poverty if you have below... I can't remember what the exact figure is. So relative poverty would be saying, you might say if you don't have certain things compared to someone else, you're poor. But absolute poverty is, you're struggling to feed yourself, that you're needing to use a food bank, for example, things like this. That has increased, and it's not really surprising at the moment when inflation is so high.
Sorry, one of you was going to speak. I had an intake of breath to my left then. Who was it?
Well, looking for consensus again amongst this group. We were agreeing a lot this evening, but one of the things that I think we must do, and where Britain is very bad, is just housing. One of the reasons why we're falling behind most other people in Europe is we just don't build enough houses. So for the wage that you earn, the percentage it is taken up by just living expenses is so much greater than the European average. If we really built enough houses for people, we really would begin to tackle this basic poverty problem. And then if we added on top of that we actually built houses, perhaps even social housing, near to the extended family, because the extended family looks after you in a way that government doesn't measure at the moment. My own parents have moved near to my sister. They've looked after my nephew. The care that they give to my nephew, the care that they get back is huge. It's not measured by the state. It's not appreciated.
Look at the time. I've just noticed the time. So Tim can tell me his family story in a minute. I'm going to move myself and my kid next to your family. They seem fantastic. They look after all the kids. That's what I say. Anyway, you've just touched on a nice point, Tim, because starting from Friday, actually, this week, we're going to be doing a series of Fix the Nation. We're going to get into the big issues in this country and look at how do we fix them. Housing is one. Immigration is another. Cost of living is another. So nice tee up for that, Tim. Thank you very much to my panel tonight. Thank you as well. For your company at home, John's been in touch saying, I like it when you're ill, Michelle. It takes the edge off your accent. Lovely. Have yourself a wonderful evening, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Ada McGiven from the Met Office. What a day. Extraordinary temperatures, with the first time 40 Celsius has been exceeded in the UK. Much fresher weather arrives now from the west. That's already been making inroads from the west during the day. Southwest England, parts of West Wales and Northern Ireland. Earlier on, had much lower temperatures and some showers as well. And those showers are now making their way eastwards across the country, clearing the east of England close to midnight. And then, well, some showers or rain for eastern Scotland, a few shower clouds as well for parts of Wales and the southwest. But in between, clear spells and, well, a little bit more comfortable overnight, but not much. 18 to 20 Celsius in the south, 14 or 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And then a bright start for many on Wednesday, but a fresher start, certainly, particularly in the east, where there will be some sunshine around first thing. But as temperatures rise, well, the potential for some heavy showers and thunderstorms to develop. Central southern England into parts of East Anglia and the southeast, most notably. Still, 29 to 30 Celsius possible in the far east of England, but a much fresher low to mid-20s further north and west. Now, the showers that do develop could cause some issues on the roads, a lot of surface water and so on. Of course, they're falling onto dry ground and could be some very heavy downpours for a short spell of time, but they clear away overnight. And then an area of low cloud creeps into parts of eastern England, eastern Scotland by dawn on Thursday. Some further showers into the northwest of Scotland by this stage as well, but the best of any sunshine on Thursday at first will be across western areas. But as the day goes on, even the cloud in the east will tend to lift and break, and we'll see some brighter interludes come through here. A warm day in the southeast, 26 Celsius, but fresher feel, I think, for many of us. On Friday, sunny spells and showers. Saturday's looking very similar.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.